Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser on a Monday morning. And Grumpy is here. And this time, not just because he's on contract to appear on Monday mornings, but we are all clearly, just judging by the audience over here, geesh, like 60, 90 seconds late, which I blame Matush for, by the way, because he's constantly changing locations. I was waiting for Matush to go live. Then I look and I'm like, holy cow, he's late, kind of a thing. But I am here as your Turkish delights and the Polish delights. What is that? Poshki? Pachki?
It depends on what your preference is, but Punchki
Oh,
is
really?
fine.
It's going to be both?
What's that?
The Pachki thing? What is that thing called?
Punchki?
Ponchki, that's what it is.
Yep.
Delicious, by the way.
You know, I'm just I'm just really grumpy because last week at this time, you know what we said when we were sitting here? We said, "How many times have we come back from the weekend so happy?" And this week has been a week from fucking hell, man.
But why is that? I was going to ask you that. We come here every Monday, and he's either here because of contracts, or he's here like because we're grumpy. There seems to be no in between. I was literally just as I was waiting for you because you were late. I was in a I was in a WhatsApp group chat, and there are people saying like nothing is good enough. Like this manager is not good enough, the recruiting is not good enough, and stuff. I'm like, what is happening? Like winning the Premier League is not good enough for anybody anymore. Like I don't understand what I know it was like a horrible week. You think your week was horrible. I had to live that mirror that life in Turkey as well, where Fenerbahce goes out on penalty kicks on Thursday. Then they lose points yesterday. I was like, what is happening? Let this week just blow off the whole week and let it not happen again. But um, I don't know. I understand it and I get it. It is disappointing, but it feels ridiculous to say that just winning the league is disappointing.
100%. Yeah, no, I think we're gonna be okay. I think most of us should be okay.
I think
In
we're gonna be okay.
in a couple of months when everything is fine. No, I if this was the reverse, let's say that we had just lost the match against Arsenal. They went 12 points clear with four games left, and all we had to show for it was a League Cup. Then we would be very disappointed, right? But because this is the other way around, I think this is still a hell of a season to hang your hat on. It was always meant to be a transition year. Now we really are figuring out that next year is the transition year. So I don't want to know what that's going to look like quite yet. However, as far as this year goes, there's a lot to be proud of. There's a lot to be, happy about. I just think that we've talked about allowing your expectations to change throughout a season, right? And I think it's just the fact that the way that we went out in both competitions in 1 week seemed avoidable, if you will. It felt like something that didn't necessarily have to happen. Not that anything has to happen per se, but I think overall it's deflating, but it's going to be okay given where we're at in the league and what I mean. God forbid, I swear, if things really do collapse and we somehow don't win the league, I'm taking years off of watching
Yeah,
football.
we talked about this. If this, yeah, that would be. We'll talk. Let's talk about that. My head hurts. I need subtitles, says Jamie, because it was the
Happy
celebration for
anniversary.
yesterday. That's
Is
called a
that-
hangover, not a headache. But
No,
um,
it's a headache because he was celebrating the eve of his anniversary to his wife yesterday. That's what it. So
oh, that's
yeah, yeah.
nice change over there. Did you pretend you were Irish yesterday, or well, it's today, isn't it?
It's today. It's today. No, but I think I chose the wrong kits to wear for Michelle and I, so I think I'm the blame for yesterday's match because
Yeah,
I
I saw the photo by the way on Instagram, and yeah, I don't know what was the thought behind that there.
I don't know what the thought was either. I
Did
thought
you guys at least change at halftime?
what's up?
Did you guys at least change at halftime? Seeing
No,
that the first half isn't going our way,
we had nothing to change into because I'm at her parents' house.
you know what? You guys got to get your shit together. Can we not talk about yesterday, please? Find something positive. Well, I mean, I don't know. the yesterday thing, the double would have definitely been a lot better. Obviously, like goes without saying. Especially when the Champions League was gone, I was like, that's fine. You know, we should be more than happy with the double kind of thing. I think the biggest disappointment is coming, and I think most people kind of realize this, that that was probably our last like really big game of the season. It felt like, and we lost it, and we didn't just lose it. We were just like, I mean, really, like it says 2-1 when you look at the final score, but really, it had no business being even 2-1. It should have been probably like 4-1 or something like that, if that, or 3-0 or something like that. See, Marv is doing what he can, changing the kit at halftime. But I honestly, the goal came in too late, so I didn't blame any of the circumstances that I normally would. But yeah, I mean, there is a clear drop, and I'm sure, I think it's just Bickler and I tonight. So we'll talk about like the drop and all that stuff and whys and more tactical stuff at night. But like in terms of like the effect of yesterday, isn't it like a little bit of an overreaction? And we do this all the time, right? We have one great week, beat City. What was it again? They won that same week. Newcastle. It was Newcastle. And then they're the best team ever. They're back and stuff like that. And then you get two games like this back to back. And I still don't think we played bad, by the way, against PSG. That was like a really good team. I thought, especially in the second half, we played good. I think people kind of like, it's a bit more convenient. So people are looking at both games against PSG instead of the second game. I thought the second game was pretty darn decent. Not in overtime. We fell off in overtime, but it was pretty decent. I mean, the ups and downs, is it just result based? Obviously, we can see some things on the pitch as well. But to take that and project that into the Premier League, or say this is not good enough and stuff like that, just feels like ridiculously harsh.
I think it is harsh. I think the only thing though is that I think there's probably some trauma from last year, seeing how the wheels came off around this time last year, and people are looking at that thinking the absolute worst, thinking that this is how it's going to go this year because it's just like a cyclical thing. And at the same time, people just want to always have their voices heard on whatever social media platform it is that they want to get their voices heard on. There are some people in the groups that you're part of that will never be positive. They'll never have anything good
True.
to say. It's only ever going to be negative. And I think I've really spent a lot less time in those groups, and I've spent a lot more time just either by myself or in the Discord. I know our Discord can be a little negative at times, but I think there's at least for the most part like rationale behind most of the stuff that people are saying. It's not just not always emotionally charged, even though there are moments. I mean, during the game specifically, a lot of comments are emotionally charged. But then
Yeah.
after the game, I feel like we can usually get to a point where we understand what each other is saying or why we're getting to that point. But when you think about the groups that people are in, and you multiply that by 10, it's too much, and people expect too much perfection. And I think City sort of ruined us for better or for worse, because we always expected to have to be at 100 points we have 3 trophies to make it a good year. Otherwise, what's the point of playing?
But I mean, the league record, if you look at it, is still pretty darn good. I mean, on pace for like 90 or something like that, which is pretty darn good. Or in the 90s, I should say. So
I'm
I
not the negative one yelling on the media in the
Dude,
media.
it is like, and I understand disappointment. See, okay, so there is one where people set the expectations too high and then disappointed, and I can kind of live with those people because they got caught in it, right? They were like, like we started the season saying like, oh, let's go to the Champions League, and I think part of it is the league being almost done and dusted. Obviously, it's not, and everybody's freaking out now. But I think if you have a title race, people approach it differently and still big behind the team and like support what's out there, as opposed to like kind of like semi abandoning them already. Like this guy should go, that guy should go. We should do this, we should do that, and then like wanting. We'll talk about that. I'll get to the whole like wanting more minutes thing. But I think I'm okay with those people because they're like, emotional. They get caught up in the day. The guys that I can't stand is guys who started the season saying this team is no good, this manager is no good, blah blah blah. And then they were like, "Oh, we're winning. We're gonna win the league and stuff like that." And then when every time a score that's not a win comes out, they're coming out of the bushes and they were like, "We told you guys so. We should have done this. We should have done this and stuff like that." Those are the people I can't stand because they're the ones that are just like almost enjoying it when we're not getting the results.
Enjoying it just for the sake of saying, "I told you so. I was
Yeah,
right." Yeah, it's stupid. Just be a fan. Live in the moment from week to week, and get excited about the highs, and yeah, get upset about the lows. But at the same time, you have to be able to be in the middle sometimes, and ride that wave. I mean, can you imagine if social media was as prevalent as it is now? Let's say, in like the early 2010s, how toxic things would be. But then you think about, I don't know if you would have as many fans because let's be honest, the success of the club under Klopp brought in more fans and brought in a lot more voices, I think. And unfortunately, I feel like sometimes the voices that are loudest are the ones who might be newest to the club because they came at a time when they expect that everything that they saw was clear skies with 95 plus points with
yeah, that could be a part
finals
of it. Yeah.
there. And I'm not going to go and fact and background check every person that posts on Facebook to see how long they've been a fan, because it's ridiculous. But I feel like we've gotten to this point where some of us just expect way too much, and it's not fair to the players. I mean, it's not fair to the club. It's just they're human beings. They're tired human beings, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm okay with somebody who gets the expectations way too high by themselves and stuff like that, and then come back to reality eventually. But some of these people are just no, like that's not the thing. It's just all about these are just negative people. Like these are around like people around work and stuff like that too. Something good happens and they're still not happy. They're like, well, they should have done this too, and stuff like that. It's always like. I mean, I don't know. I think we all have people like that in our lives that are just happy not to be ever happy kind of thing. And then kind of like make the argument that like I'm not never satisfied. We should aim for higher and stuff like that. No, you should aim realistic. It's what you should do, not just think we're gonna win every single. And how much fun would that even be? And look, I'm disappointed too. Like Joshua, good morning, sir. Says I'm kind of relieved that we have to focus on. I mean, the thing is, I don't feel like that because I mean this was a final, so it's not like we eliminated games and we can focus on the Premier League and stuff. But I do agree with this that we're still gonna have a good season with winning the Premier League. Which, if I asked everybody, and we probably talked about this on air multiple times. If you rank the trophies, Premier League would be on top. I think yes, it is disappointing because it's almost like that's what I mean. I think the fact that we have such a huge point lead and everybody's like, "Oh, we're winning this, we're winning this." Not only us, I think we hear it from all outside, like the entire Premier League's like, "You guys won," kind of a deal, right? Um, we almost felt like that's already in the pocket. So they're like, okay, what else is here? It's almost like you went and you already ate, and you're like, okay, what's for dessert? What do they have and stuff like. And so
Even though you
we're
just
like,
had the best meal of your life.
yeah,
Yeah, I think to that point too, I think, but it's also really good that we have this lead in the league because if it was a 3 point gap and we had this week, I can only imagine how much worse everything would be from the reactions.
doesn't that also scare you that if things were not going well, God forbid, like we went back a decade and had a season like that? I mean, would these people just leave?
Hopefully.
Would they get sick of like crying for like a month and then they would just leave,
Yeah,
or they would stick around and see that lineup
I don't know.
that
They'd find
tried out there?
the next big thing. Maybe they'll become PSG fans. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, it's something that in any sport, you have to be prepared to have moments that you will not enjoy. You can't win everything. You have to be ready to lose. And if you can't, then just be a fan of the sport and just root for every team that wins every game and don't put any personal interest or stock into a single team because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I mean, fans have always been toxic, says Cersei. Yeah, I mean, Like, look, fans are toxic because sadly, the toxic people or the people online are the loudest, and so if they're toxic, they get toxic. And I talked about this before. It's especially in our online world right now, like what we do, right? We come up here and we talk and we kind of like spill our guts or whatever it might be. If you're doing this for kind of what we're doing, which is we're coming out here and spilling our guts, right? Chatting, like, kind of like the community thing. If you're coming out over here and you want clicks and stuff, you're going to do a lot better if you throw nonstop rants. Because that stuff is that's the stuff that gets shared. And two, that's the stuff that people like in any society. The guy who's screaming in the corner gathers more of a crowd than the other guy in the other corner says like, okay, let's take a look at this over here and stuff like that. So I feel like it's the same thing like in the YouTube world. The guy who's ranting and raving, and he might change his tune in every 2 days, and nobody comes back and says, dude, you were just like ranting like yesterday. They're like, oh, he's so emotional and stuff like, okay, emotional and stupid and inconsistent are like can't be the same thing, because I feel like that's what that is. That's being inconsistent. If you're coming over here and saying Sled is not good enough, this is not good enough, we got to sell this, we got to sell that, this is like this, all this sucks, and then but 2 weeks ago you were like, oh, what a turnaround, gotta love this club, you found the right guy and stuff like that. That's not ranting and raving, being emotional. That's just being an inconsistent idiot.
Yeah, 100%. I don't
And
think
there's way too many of them.
there are because it's so easy to put content out there. I mean, look at us. Do we deserve to be out here talking about stuff? Yes, but think of all the other people who aren't.
Oh, I would argue. Oh man, we went back and forth with this guy on one of our shows. I hope he's watching, by the way. I can't remember his name. He's one of those guys that has like a bunch of letters and numbers as his name because he couldn't figure out how to change the one that YouTube assigned him, probably. But or couldn't come up with anything original himself. But yeah, we've been going back and forth. It's been fun. It's been fun. Arkansas Razorback. Yeah, I'm never seen him. So I mean, I've seen him, I've heard of him, but I've never watched the game with the Razorbacks. So yeah, I'm assuming yeah they're not getting to those ranks and stuff like that. And I think like a decade ago and stuff, this team was more losing than winning at some times. And I don't know, like maybe that's what it is. Like if you are newer and in the US especially, it's okay, that's fine. And we got that's kind of like been our mission to get the new fans taught about the club and stuff like that. Is it just, and I don't think it's just being new, it's like recency bias. So like you look at the last 5 years and you expect winning all the time and stuff like that, so these ridiculous expectations come up, and I'm okay with like high expectations. But and yes, we want to win everything. I was rooting for Trent to win the stupid FIFA thing during COVID. Like we're going to want to win everything. That's natural. And during the game, like you're saying, being emotional about it and stuff, I think that's natural too. Some of us might take it a couple of degrees further than others, but don't be raising your hands, Mr. Jota.
I'm
But
not throwing people in front of a bus. You can back off, okay?
but I think afterwards, like the next day when you sit down like this, if the thought that comes into your mind is like, none of this is good enough, I just don't understand. That's the part I don't understand. Like it's okay to be afterwards disappointed. I just don't understand that nothing is good enough. This guy is not good enough. The manager is not. How you say this manager is not good enough is crazy to me after the season we've had. So when Klopp had a season like this last year, but won the League Cup and lost the league, whereas this manager is losing the League Cup, but hopefully will win the league. Nobody said manager is not good enough. It was FSG. So if anything, FSG must be happy that Slot is the new shield now they can use because he's getting blamed as opposed to Klopp didn't get blamed last season for it. We said injuries, these guys got tired. FSG should have a deeper squad and people moved on. This year it's Chiesa should get minutes because all these fans are watching practices and seeing what he's doing and stuff like that. So in a good position to say who should get what minutes.
Yeah, I think. Well, I still feel like I've seen a bit of a split between the blame for Slot and the blame for FSG because there isn't enough depth. I think that's what I keep seeing mostly is that FSG is getting the blame for not enough depth, and then Slot's getting the blame for not having the trust in the players that came on. But to that point, if we'll have to talk about the game a little bit yesterday. You were going up against the midfield of Guimaraes, Joelinton, and Tonali, right? You have those three guys, and you put out your best midfield because you have to because you've got McAllister, Soboslai, Gravenberch. That is your biggest, toughest midfield, I'd say, with the exception of maybe Jones coming in. But if Jones comes in, it depends on for who, and that changes the look of the entire midfield. Elliott's not going to fit in that midfield because he was going to get bullied the entire game. I understand that, he came on and he was a spark plug kind of guy, and he showed a lot of energy. And it's really easy to show a lot of energy when you've got 10 minutes left and you need to come back from
And you're up two, so the other team, like Newcastle, already was kind of taking steps back and was happy with defending.
Yeah, and so I don't think with all these people wanting a different lineup, I don't think they could realistically put together a different starting 11 that would work better than what happened yesterday. Because the game plan, the tactics from Newcastle still would have been the same no matter who was out there. They would have shut Salah off at the wing. They would have shut both wings off, honestly, and they would have just forced us to hoof it through the air onto heads. And that's what we tried to do because that's all that we could do. I think it would have been the same either way. If you want to make any sort of criticism for Slot, maybe it's that I think maybe he could have tried the four midfielder thing he did against City, because I think that was a good experiment. I think that worked. So I don't know if you have Jota and Nunez, who you're not necessarily trusting both right now for a full 90, why not try that four midfield solution that you had earlier in the year? That's the only thing that I think that I could have seen differently. But
the answer to that, I think, is because in these games, same thing as the PSG game, that's where the depth issue comes in. So now you tried out three guys out there because there's a possibility of overtime. So you put all your midfielders out there. What's going to happen if we go to overtime? Because now you can't replace them. Or towards the end of the game, as they wear down, you can't replace them. That's where the depth issue, I think, comes into play, because you don't have anybody to come in for those tired legs now. Whereas if you don't put Jones out there, Jones is the guy who comes in for the guy with the tired legs. I mean, that would be, if I'm Slot, that would be like my defense, because yes, it did work, but it was a 90-minute league game, so you knew what you had. Whereas this one, you can have another 30, and who's going to play that 30? We saw what happened in the overtime against PSG. And that was with not doing it. So just God forbids if you had even less midfield.
I get that, but the counter could also be that in the extra time, then if you need to make subs, you bring on the likes of Jota and Nunez, or you bring on strikers who have the last 20 minutes to maybe make a chance out of it, because both teams are going to slow down quite a bit at that time. You don't necessarily need as many legs potentially, depending on how the game is going. But at the same rate, putting in four midfielders doesn't necessarily mean that you're setting yourself up for a 120-minute match. That might have been the best way to go about it to end the game in 90 minutes in your favor.
Yeah, but there's no guarantees on that. So you gotta plan for the long haul.
There were no guarantees with this lineup either, right? So I think
No, I get that, but then you have you can't have backup plans. Whereas now your backup plan is taking midfielders out and putting more attackers in a game that becomes heavily relying on midfield. As the minutes go by, what happens in the middle gets more and more important, because that's when you see a wide open gap suddenly in the middle, because midfield start getting tired.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying, but let's say you have the four. Let's say you do Jones, Gravenberch, Soboslai, McAllister, right? And you get into extra time. Then you have Elliott and Endo that you could have for two of those midfielders, and sub Jones out from one of the attackers up front. So then you just change three midfielders without necessarily. I mean, there is a gap between who you subbed in versus who you subbed off, but for those last 30 minutes, a fresh Endo, Elliott, and striker might have been better than the other.
And this is where we're coming to the squad problem there. And I'm going to ask you this. I was going to ask this to Bickler tonight too, but Hassan says we'll win the league. We have more than enough points, and Arsenal's not good enough to catch up. And I think in some ways, this international break, maybe not for us fans, or not for like us fans now having to deal with the toxic fans, but for the team, I think it comes at a good time to have like 2 weeks, come back. And you're coming back to a derby game as well, so that's going to be tricky. But it's at Anfield, and I mean, magic number is 15, right? With what, 9 games to go?
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, if we do lose the title from here, yeah, I'm gonna take a leave of absence. I have already the paperwork ready to go. I'll be taking a leave of absence and just take a decade or so off, and then I'll be back if I'm still alive, kind of a deal. But oh yeah, let's go back to the squad thing, because I was actually, this is a question that I've been meaning to ask on the Monday Night Podcast for 2 weeks now. But then other things have come up and other topics, and I usually have a couple of things in mind, but if the conversation, kind of like our morning show, if you suddenly start talking about food, before you know it, we talk about food for half an hour and we don't talk anything else. But so it never got to. But if you're building a squad, right, do you want players that are, because we've talked about it, right? We come here, we say the subs came in, they gave you something totally different, right? Do you want players that are going to come in and give you something totally different that you were not getting? Or do you want more of the same on the bench? So do you want another guy like Jones on your bench? Or do you want a guy like Endo or like Elliott on your bench? Because clearly it's looking like Slot wants another Jones on the bench, as opposed to a guy who can kind of give you something totally different. But if you're building a team, what do you want from the guy on the bench?
This answer might surprise you.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. I in serious I in seriousness, I think there has to be a little bit of both, because you can only prepare for a match for so long, right? However many days you have leading up to that match. How the match goes will dictate what you need during the match. And sometimes things go a way you didn't expect to, and you need to bring in someone that is different from what you were planning on, because it does offer something different. If you're doing the same thing over and over again and you bring on the same kinds of players over and over again, what are you doing differently then? How do you change the game if you're bringing on similar players that do similar things when you need someone to do something different because something's not working?
See, I think you had a great opportunity to be like both ways, because I think personally, in a spot like midfield, you want more of the same. But maybe up top, you want difference. Like your 9, like the guy on the bench is different than the guy that normally starting, because this game calls for
Which we
that
do.
kind of a guy. But I think for midfield, I think you do want the same guys, because the engine room, if you will, I mean, those guys should be the same type of guys, so that you're not changing the game. Because what you want to do in midfield in normally is like consistent. What you want out of your midfield. Up top, the way you attack might be different, the way you defend might be different, but I feel like the guys in the middle have to give you the same thing consistently. So if you're taking a McAllister out, the guy that comes in, okay, if he's like Endo has been a great closer, sad, but you can clearly see that's the only role he has, because he's not coming in a game where we're chasing things.
Right. I understand that.
Whereas Elliott, for example, only comes in when we are chasing things, because normally, like maybe defensively and physically, he can't be relied on. So, I mean, it becomes like, do you want those like specialty, like when you have depth? I mean, I think people don't understand this. People say like 15, 16, okay, like, oh, we only have 13 and stuff. You're not going to have 22, or you're not going to have that quality. Like the last 3, 4 guys are going to be your youth guys, hopefully, that can come close to what you're putting out on the pitch. But I mean, it's not realistic to have. Somebody said, like literally, I was in a, maybe I should just avoid these chats altogether, but somebody said we should have planned better. So we had a right back instead of having to play Kwanzaa there. I'm like, you are not going to have 3 right backs in a squad. There's no world where not to mention, you actually have even planned against that. And you have a center back who can play right back. he is injured too. So, and then his comeback was, I'm like, no squad is. Thank God there were a couple of other sensible people in the chat, and they were like, well, no squad is gonna have like three right backs. He was like, yeah, we should have signed another center back. Okay, how is that helping? Because you're complaining that we are having to start Kwanzaa as right back. So you're not gonna have a squad that's like 20, 30 people deep and with that quality. Because we talked about this before. Who wants to come and be the 24th guy? We see how Chelsea ended up. That's not an
Try to,
answer.
try to convince someone like Jeremy Frimpong to come in right now with Trent and Bradley on the roster. Also
Yeah.
with Gomez possibly playing right back, and evidently Kwanzaa when needed. Try convincing that guy to come here to fight for his minutes. No. Then I think that's the problem though with your potential midfield solution, is that I feel like the kinds of guys that you would want to come in for who we have would be too good to not be starting. And I don't know if they would be interested in joining the team for that reason. Because
Hmm.
when you're thinking of, I understand there's a level of similar play, but the similar play with the level drop off is enough to be like, well, it's not worth it then, because we can sit here and argue and say that, well, if you had someone just like McAllister come in, but he's much worse, then it's not like having someone like McAllister come in, because he's not going to play the same anyway, because he's not good enough, but he plays the same way. I guess that's how I'm looking at it, is you can have two people that play similarly, but if one is many levels above the other, you're not going to get the same output.
But you wouldn't say like, I mean, McAllister's a lot better player than Endo, right? But if level wise, okay, like if they were both sitting on the bench and you're protecting a lead, you're probably throwing Endo out there. So they're
No,
like different, you know what I mean? Like in terms of quality, yes, McAllister is definitely better. But if Endo at his current level, and he's a very solid player, right? But if he had more of McAllister capabilities as opposed to having his own unique sets of skills. I have a unique set of skills. You know what I mean? That's what you're comparing. Do you want Endo or do you want somebody at the level of Endo but is more like McAllister? I guess is the question. Mm. Cersei says he blames FIFA games for people's stupidity. I'll be honest, dude. Yes, that's partially why. Because I play people like I was telling Matush about this. I played a dude, and I don't know how the hell he made that lineup. Like FIFA probably warned him like 85 times, but he had Liverpool as well, and he didn't have Mo starting. Like he had Chiesa starting. Maybe he thought Chiesa should get more minutes, so he had Chiesa starting.
he's faster
And
than
then
Mo.
I didn't even understand what was happening. Like I was winning, obviously, but I was Matush knows what I mean. But I was winning, like I was playing you or something. So I was like winning, and then like he made a sub, like he keeps stopping the game, and I was like, what is going on? And he made subs, and you know how it tells you on top, like after they come in and stuff. And I saw Mo, and I was like, did he take him out? Like, why would you take Mo out? You're already like way behind. Then I saw Mo on the pitch. I'm like, oh my god, he put Mo in. And afterwards, the dude like messages me and he's like, dude, can you give me your lineup? Because your lineup is really good. I'm like, yeah, I have Mo starting.
Surprise, surprise.
Like, why did you even pick Liverpool if you know nothing, by the way? Darwin the Goat is on the house. I don't see about that. I worry about the meltdown we see. See, I think the meltdown is fans, though. I don't think the meltdown is the team, especially not now. I'm sure they're disappointed as hell over this week as well because they were chasing, like 3 trophies and it's down to one. But I think the lead is too big to be that worried. That's where I'm at, and I'm a worrier by lifestyle.
Okay, and if you're not worried, then I'm not worried.
I'll set the parameter. Actually, you
Yeah,
know what?
you
Cersei
are
has taken the
comfortable.
trophy of the warrior, so we'll ask Cersei if he's worried. But I think here's another thing that I'm not worried about. I saw Arsenal Chelsea game before.
Yes, but you know what? I didn't want to say this in the Discord, and I probably shouldn't say this right now on air because now it's actually coming out of my mouth, and I can't say that someone stole my phone
You
and
look
said
like Chelsea.
what?
Will you look like Chelsea
Yeah,
afterwards? Yeah,
yeah.
like attacking with no idea is what it looked like. I was thinking
It's
the same thing, sadly.
if Mo is shut down the way he is, and we don't have Trent to break the lines, we really don't have anything. And I think that's what's worrying going forward into the future potentially. And I don't want to think about that as much, but I couldn't help watching that game yesterday after watching the Arsenal Chelsea game, thinking, man, we look like Chelsea without Palmer. They're just devoid of any idea. They've got Cucurella running all over the place, doing nothing. And it sort of felt like Robertson at times yesterday looked like Cucurella, kind of like finding decent pockets, but also just kind of just being there for just sake of being there and not being found by his teammates too. You had Diaz dribbling into people the same way that Nkunku was dribbling into people. It just, I don't know. It was rough. And I think because it happened back to back, it was so much easier to make that comparison. But I was not going to say it in the Discord yesterday throughout all the
Oh,
emotion.
actually, I thought I did say it. Maybe I didn't say it. I definitely thought it. I was like, man, I don't freaking like I can't believe this. Like we were talking smack about him, and it looks pretty much the same over here, kind of a deal. But um, I think that's one thing that's concerning. So actually, we did talk about him. Cody False Nine says, "We'll be honest to be the luckiest PL Premier League winners since there's no real
I'm
competition."
so sick of that narrative.
I am kind of sick of that narrative
That
too.
sounds
I would buy that narrative if we were at 60 points. But
yeah.
I mean, you look at our records. I mean, it's not our fault we're doing still well, and nobody else is like kind of pushing us. It's not like we're doing bad and we're the best out of all the bad teams. We're still doing really good. Just there's nobody really
It
anywhere
sounds
close to being that good.
that narrative is done by rival fans. So it sounds like you're not a fan of this club if you're gonna try and celebrate the league that way, because it's not our fault. And we're still gonna and you can still end the season here on 85 to 90 points. That wins
Yeah,
most leagues in the last 30 years, the last 33, whatever the Prem's been around. That wins you the league in majority of those years. I think that's just a lazy, tired narrative, and I don't like it.
I think it's a narrative, but then you keep hearing it as a Liverpool fan, and I almost get like Cody False Nine is like, is that true kind of thing. Well, this is like obviously not coming from Cody False Nine that Lucho is possibly our best attacker after Mo. True or false? That's a true or false question for you.
I
You
mean,
can't be like a little bit of both, a
it's
little bit of true. A little bit
it's
of
both true and false. Um, I mean, I think he is, but it's not like we don't have a lot to choose from. Well, actually, no, I take that back. I think Gakpo is our best attacker after Mo. I think it goes Mo, Gakpo, Mo, Gakpo, Diaz, and
So
then
why Gakpo over Diaz?
I think he is a more versatile winger where he can change his game depending on what's needed. Whereas Luis Diaz, I feel like he only has one sort of way he plays, and he only plays that way. But I think Gakpo can offer you a different style of play depending on what is necessary. So but I think it really is week to week. I mean, I right now I wouldn't want Gakpo anywhere near the 11 because he doesn't seem sharp enough. He's not. I don't think he's fit all the way, and I don't think he should be out there. So recently Diaz for sure, but I think overall I probably edge Gakpo a little over.
I think that's the issue I have with Gakpo, and I think Diaz gets way too much shit from fans. And I realize his like goals and assists are better. I think I'm assuming Gakpo has more goals and assists than Diaz. I don't know about assists, definitely goals. But my thing with Diaz versus Gakpo is I do agree that Gakpo is a better player. Like if they're both on their day, right? I would probably take Gakpo because he's going to finish or he's going to create and stuff like that. My problem is when Gakpo is not on his day, he's horrible. Like he's either like 7 or above or
Right.
like 3. Like you
Yeah.
never have a Gakpo that has like that's going to be a 6 out of 10. He was decent or 6.5 or something like that. Whereas I feel like Diaz, because of his like work rates and running and energy and stuff like that, even if he's not effective, he's probably a lot more 6s and rare 7s, maybe never 8, 9s, and 10s and stuff like that. But I just feel like because of that work rate and this maybe the speeds, the threat of the speed or whatever, he has more of a constant threat, even when he's not on his day. Whereas I feel like Gakpo is on or off, and there's no dimmer switch. He's just on or off. Whereas Gakpo can be somewhere in the middle. And I know why that is. I don't know if it's the pace, if it's the work rate. I can't put my finger on it, but I feel like when I compare those two, I'm always afraid to pick Cody because I don't know which Cody I'm going to get.
I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. I guess it depends on if what kind of player you prefer, right? Do you prefer a guy that can give you a 7 or 8, but you have to take some threes, or do you prefer a guy that's going to give you a 5 to a 7 every game? And I think it depends on the
Which
system,
one?
depends on who
Which
else
one
is
do
on
you
the
pick?
team. Which one do I pick? I think I picked the guy
You
who
pick
can give you
A.
7 or 8 and sometimes gives you a 3, right? Because I think this system allows you for it. However, if this was Klopp's system, we would need someone like Diaz way more than Gakpo.
Yeah.
So I think that's the tough thing, is that it's really predicated on what the game needs from you at this time. Because I do agree, Diaz is more consistent and he gives you the work rate coming back. At least he does the defensive dirty work, and he will get back. Gakpo, if he gets back, he's having a great game. That's kind of how it goes. But I feel like he can also change the game a lot more than Diaz can going forward on their day.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess. I'm kind of like torn on that, to be honest with you. That's why people who are in a rush to move Diaz, I'm kind of like lost in because I think it's the least of our problems. I think we were talking about that with John last week. I feel like the least of your problems is having two good left wingers. So at least if Cody is on a 3 day, he can come in, or the other way. And he's shown that he can play in the middle. So he's essentially has been more versatile than Cody, who could not go to the middle, does not want to go into the middle and stuff like that. I saw Jota before Lucho or Darwin. I would sell Darwin first. If I'm selling people up top, I'm selling
Yeah.
Darwin, then I'm selling Jota because I'm keeping just Jota as like the second guy. I'm not keeping Darwin as the second guy. Just not happening.
If we have to keep one of those two, I'm keeping Jota, but I'd rather sell both.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. But like I say, like in terms of order of people being sold, I'm shopping Nunez first and probably a bigger market for it. Morning, guys. Been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. Dang it. Diaz looks spent after 20 games. Troy Deeney about Salah not being world class. Shoot me if you like. Actually, I just pressed the button over here, so there'll be somebody at your door in like 5, 4, 3. Gagpo. I think yeah, Darwin is gone too. So here's the deal now. When you see Mo fall, because clearly when your focus is attacking forces through one player, like we are with Mo, as he goes down in form, so does the team. And I think that's kind of like what happened. And maybe teams have figured it out. I don't know how much of this is teams figuring it out or Mo, similar to last year. And I know he was coming back from injury and stuff like that too, on top of this year. But seeing a Mo like this, which is not fair because we're looking at the last week or the guy who's breaking every goddamn record there is
We
over there.
talked about him being a Ballon d'Or winner
Yeah.
2 3 weeks ago, you guys.
But seeing him be like this, where he looks extremely average, right? Like the last couple of games over here. Does that put a scare or does that give you a little bit of a now I know why FSG is a little worried? Because do you want a more like that for a couple of years?
I mean, the worry is if there is no Mo, does this team look like this for another 2 years? I
But I think
obviously
that your plan changes. Like you plan accordingly going into the season.
yes, but what if your plan backfires? What if you have target A, B, C, priority D, E, F, and you get stuck with GHI? Does how different does that look then? You could go through the whole alphabet if you need to, but I won't show off that I can do the whole alphabet, you guys. I won't need to show that off today. I just think that where were we again about Mo? I just think that maybe can we find a final outside of the Spurs Champions League final that Mo participated in that felt like he had a big impact? I think he's a world-class player, but I think in a one-off game, where teams can plan for 90 minutes of just making sure one side of the attack gets shut down. I don't think he has a way to work around that himself, because you take away what he does and that he's a provider, a playmaker from that side. If you take that away, there's not much left for him to do. So I don't think it's not that he's world class. I just think that in finals it's maybe easier to game plan against him.
But here's the thing with that. I mean, I get that, but I mean, is there a player that you game plan, especially a winger? You can shut down a wing. It's a lot easier to shut down a wing than shut down the guy in the middle, because the guy in the middle can go all over the place, right? But if there's a left winger or a right winger, you're a basketball guy. You can double him. You can kind of stop him. You can slow him down, stop him, and say, "You're not beating us from this side." Well, that's on the team then, because that takes a lot to be able to do that. That takes additional people allocated to cover that, right? Or playing differently to cover that. That's on the team then to utilize that, because the other side is wide open. And I think that's why people are so much on Diaz, because I think we want Diaz to be another Mo, which is not fair, because there's like, they don't grow on trees. But then, when you have somebody like that on the other side who can create just as well, then you should be able to beat people. I mean, I just don't think it's fair to say. I mean, Mo has scored so many big time goals in big games, and they might not have been finals, they might have been the Premier League and stuff like that. But I just feel like the narrative that he like disappears in big games is a little over the top.
I guess not disappear in big games, but just in because big games do exist outside of finals. I understand. I'm just saying that when you take it from just the finals perspective, I can't think of a final we've been in that Mo has had much of a impact on. That's all that I'm saying, is that I just can't think of one. And you can talk about, shutting down wings as a team thing, but you look at guys like Cristiano Ronaldo, right? You look at guys like Messi, like right now, like Rafinha, like Lamine Yamal. You can game plan against them, but it's not
But
easy to.
you just named two wingers on the same team.
Okay, fine. Then let's go to Let's talk about Dembele, right? I mean, there are some wingers now who are just so good that you can't necessarily shut them down that easily. And not that Mo isn't good, because
But I
we
mean,
were.
he's not shut down easily. I mean, that's I mean, like it's not. I don't know. I feel like we're kind of like this is a guy who's breaking Premier League records this year. It's not only against like Leicester and Southampton. If anything, he kind of sucked against those teams, I think. But you know what I mean? Like he's doing this again. He scored against. I mean, isn't he our top scorer against United or something like that, or definitely at Old
Yeah.
Trafford? I mean, he's scored big goals against City in our matchups against City and stuff like that. I just don't think. I mean, we're looking at like, okay, if we're just looking at finals, I'm trying to think back now. Well, one of them we played just the kids, the most recent one. One of them he got hurt, and they had to take him out of the game and hurt him because they didn't want him to hurt him ultimately.
We had the two
And then
against
yeah, the
Chelsea.
Spurs final. I can't think of like a lot of other finals personally, like off the top of my head on how we played.
The two against Chelsea in the same year.
Yeah, those games are like a blur. I mean, obviously they were both bent at penalties, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he scored his penalty, so there's that. I don't know. I think it's like my concern more was not that he can be shut down, because like I say, I think you can shut down a winger, and that's where you need the other side to step up. I just was like, the thought that came to my mind as I watch is, dude, like if in 2 years from now, but I guess the counter to that is if 2 years from now, that's how Mo is playing on a regular basis, not because it's like, Ramadan or, stuff like that, is Mo is not a guy who's gonna like to be benched, and then you can probably sell him at that time to like Saudi Arabia or something like that, and it's still gonna be more than the zero that you would get for him now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think getting any money for him is going to be positive. And getting any money for Trent, any money for Virgil potentially is always going to be better than getting nothing for them. I think, and that's always what's been our biggest frustration with the contract. I mean, my biggest frustration with the contract situation is that I get that the players aren't going to sign it just to sign it to appease the team, but to be able to get something for these guys is so monumental, because having three of your core leave for nothing, it just hurts. It just sucks.
Down says glad we're 12 clear. Endo Elliott need to play. Yeah, we should talk about that. Glad you brought it up because I want to kind of go back to it, but I just don't understand the this is like the backup quarterback thing to me, where we want these guys to play, but then people say our bench is not good enough at the same time. So which one is it? Do you want these guys to play? They're really good, or they're not really good. So then they shouldn't play. Then why do you want people? Why put people want them to play if then afterwards you're going to complain about the fact that we don't have a deep bench and our squad is not good enough?
Well, I
That's
mean,
what I'm torn in, because people say the same thing in the same sentence.
they could mean that those three are good enough, but the rest of the bench is crap. Because there's more to the bench than just those three. But I don't know, because I don't.
I mean, the Chiesa played great yesterday.
Did he? Yeah,
Did he?
he did. Oh, absolutely. I think he had a big impact on the game. I mean, there was a
Big
moment.
impact on the game. In a game like Elliott had a big impact on the game. That if you started with Elliott and Chiesa, they're not going to be the same play. I mean, you were up 2-0, and Newcastle psychologically was kind of absorbing pressure. So we were kind of,
I get
we
that,
had
but
the
it
ball.
wasn't going forward as much as Chiesa also went back, because there was a moment, it was like 88th, 89th minute, where he tracked down someone on the wing. I think it was, I believe it was Jacob Murphy. I don't know, and put in a great tackle to win the ball back
Yeah.
towards the end of the game, right? And that's the kind of stuff that I felt like we weren't getting with Jota or Nunez, like that we weren't getting that kind of energy to get back. Because yeah, going forward, you can make an easy impact when you're down two and they're inviting pressure because they're just trying to kill the game off. That's not how I feel. What I feel about Case impacting the game is everything outside of that.
See, I don't. I mean, I know like he had like a big impact in the game. I'm not debating that, but I mean, the concern I always have with Chiesa is when he's out there, he's almost trying to do, and maybe that would be different if he gets the starts with the regular starters and stuff. He almost looks like he's trying to get 90 minutes of work in within 20 minutes or 10 minutes and stuff. Probably because he's a guy who's not used to coming off the bench, so that's probably a big part of it. I just feel like, okay, so you're benching him for who? I
Jota
mean,
or
if
Nunez.
Jota and Nunez, I think I'd be okay with that. But if
Yeah.
I'm not putting him out of like Diaz or
No,
Gakpo.
but that's all we're saying is Jota or Nunez. And
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I can see him in the middle, but can he play in the middle? I guess we don't know. I guess we'll see. I don't know if
that
he,
that
having
run in
seen
half
what
turn,
we've seen.
that run in half turn with the finish with his left foot, isn't that exactly what everyone loves about Jota? Is that he's that clinical and he's that direct?
Yeah,
That's
that was a Jota-like
exactly what
goal.
I'm
But
wanting
just the
from
fact
him.
that we're saying is Jota-like says a lot about Jota, doesn't it? And you said it's
Sure, yeah, and Jota's been absolute ass for the last 3 months, but no one's ready to have that conversation because apparently it's just an agenda. But I think it's what I'm saying is that's what we want, though. We wanted someone to be that direct and take the half turn and take one touch and shoot, right? I mean, so many times we've had moments this year where we play around in the box a little bit too much, and all we need is just that one direct player. And if Jota isn't doing it, and that's what we've wanted from Jota, then having someone that does what Jota used to do that we want him to do, why not give that a go? And I think because Chiesa's been every time he's had to play with a bunch of pretty much like a makeshift lineup that isn't the normal 11. And if you give him a chance with the actual 11 and just see how he plays when he is around Diaz and
So
Mo,
why do you think he doesn't play?
probably because he's probably not as good in practice as we want him to be to get that start, right? Because like you said, we're not seeing training. We're not seeing what they're doing behind the scenes. So that's all I can think of is that there's
Clearly, he's not very good in English because he did not understand that he was given the
oh,
goal.
no. Michelle and I we were kind of cracking up about that. Like we need someone to translate to him that he scored. But I don't know, man. I think based on the situation, Endo and Elliott could start because it depends on who they're playing. I think in this game today, or like yesterday, excuse me, there was not a place for Endo or Elliott because I think both of them I think Elliott would have been bullied off the ball way too much, wouldn't
Yeah.
have had an impact on the game. Endo would have really been pressured when he had the ball because if he had the ball, because I felt like our midfield never had the ball anyway. So it's not like Endo would have been able to do much there anyway. So I think just moving forward, depending on the situation, give Chiesa the shot down the middle because you want a guy. I mean, that finish was great
Yeah.
with his left foot. I mean, you just that's what you want to see, and so why not give it a go? And again, we're not saying what's happening in training, so we don't know what's going on there. But you have to think about if Jota isn't going to give you what Jota gives you, and Nunez is kind of really hit or miss and mostly miss. Why not try something else?
Yeah, that's fair. Like I say, I'm not against them, like, getting more minutes and stuff. I feel like there has to be a reason why he's not starting. And I don't know if I mean, you would think it can't be fitness anymore for God's sakes, because he's been here like 6 months. So you would have to have, and he's been injury free, I think, for at least three. And I remember like when we saw him and some of the things he did, we were like, he's our only natural Soboslai replacement, like for that role, running a lot, winning the ball, pushing forward, making overlapping runs over Mo and stuff like that. And I really think he can be that player. It just worries me when you don't see a player gets minutes, because what is he doing like at practice that he's not getting those minutes? I mean, I just don't see Slots being like, no, I don't like Italians, I'm not playing him or anything like that. So there has to be another reason behind why he's not. I do agree with like Elliott and Endo, and I think that's why the biggest need that this team has for that midfield is a guy who is like who has the like physical but good on the ball, like technical at the same time. And they don't, they're not dime a dozen. But
Someone like Bruno Guimaraes.
I don't know. Like I feel like him and McAllister are pretty darn similar. And actually, yeah, having them on the same team would be pretty darn good. Would be pretty darn good. So that's I was thinking more like a combination of him and Jolinson. I don't have a name in mind,
I
but a
don't
guy
think that
who
player
has
exists.
the physicality. I know who has the physicality, maybe some of the size that, for example, Gravenberg has, who actually has probably the biggest drop. And like I say, some of these drops, when people do not perform well, we put it on like, oh, tired legs and they're tired and stuff like that. I don't know how much of it is. Somebody was asking in the Discord, I think, or maybe it wasn't on YouTube yesterday. It's like, oh, what happened to the Gravenberg turns? I don't think that's tired legs. I think that's people realizing. I mean, there's a lot of tape out there. These guys, practice and get ready and stuff like that. So you look at the guy, I think people know now not to attack him in a way that enables him to do that turn. Like, you know what I mean? Like, have him receive the ball. Don't like go at him and enable that turn when he kind of like suddenly turns around and he has the whole pitch in front of him and stuff. I think people are kind of like, some of it is the league adjusting, other midfields adjusting to what he does. Some of it, I'm sure, is tired legs, but he looks lost. He looks like last year's Gravenberg at times, where he just looks lost and 2 seconds behind every single play, like reacting late to every single thing. That could be mental fatigue, that could be physical fatigue. That's why, in some ways, this international break has come at a good time. But I'm not that worried. I will be worried if we suddenly start losing points. And I mean, there's another thing. Like, we've lost once in this league. So we're talking about 12 points, actually 13 points with the goal differential. So you have to lose four, actually five, to open up the door for Arsenal, who's not going to win every game. I'm just like putting that out there right now. They're not going to win every game. But
And here's another crazy concept for people out there in the world who may be listening who may not understand this, but other teams are allowed to play well and to have good tactics. You know, we can sit here all day and just talk about disappointment or not playing well or this and that. Sometimes it's because the other team plays better than you and they prepare better than you, and that's what happens. You know, I think sometimes some of our fans forget that other teams are allowed to play well, that they're allowed to win as well. And it seems like, it's always some sort of excuse instead of the other team just played that much better. I feel like sometimes we owe it to Eddie Howe. We owe it to that
maybe
midfield.
not Eddie Howe, maybe his assistant.
Fine. But that midfield yesterday for them, absolutely fantastic. And I think I said a couple months ago, I think that might be the best midfield overall in the Premier League. When you consider what they're capable of doing and what they're good at and what they're not good at, I think when you look at it in 3 versus 3 each team, I think that's one of the best midfields in the Premier
I think
League.
the biggest difference though compared to the Ligue 1 was just the presence of Joe Linton out there.
Yeah.
He's just like freaking like an enforcer in hockey. He's just like going out there. What he did to Elliott, by the way, how he got away with that is
I
beyond me. And this is why, I mean, I understand the guys. I mean, why is the fourth referee a mute? Like, why can't he have any authority to say, why can't he be like a third AR in a way? Aside from like, babysitting the managers on the sideline. Like, what is this guy doing over there? Why can't he be like, whoa, 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 you missed this, by the way? Why can't he be another set of eyes on the pitch? I'm
because
so confused.
because they can't let the people think that the main ref isn't good enough, right? I think that's what people will find is that they'll start to undermine that ref's ability to make good calls, and then they're like, well, what's the point of having a main ref at all? Just have 4 sideline refs and just blow the whistle whenever someone sees something. I mean, I think it's hyperbolic to an extent, I know, but I think that's what I think of is that I feel like they would see it as undermining the main ref, and they don't want them to make that sort of impact on the game. Even though when they see something like that, it should be called. It has to be called.
Yeah. Yeah. Taco says the game was a sham. Knew with older me. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we were just outplayed. I would love to think that, but yeah, we were just outplayed.
Media hype from Newcastle. I mean,
Dude,
everywhere.
by the way, if they said one more time how many times they haven't won a trophy and stuff like that, it was like the commentary was just freaking nauseating. And there is something to be said about this is what I hate about God, broadcasting is so like disgusting. So based on how the game is going, it's one thing to root for the underdog as we would, right? If we were watching, Newcastle play anybody else, like Arsenal, United, blah, 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 we would all probably be rooting for Newcastle. What I hate and I find disgusting is like it happens a lot in the Champions League too, where they want to kind of root for the underdog, but they're really ready. Like they have a list of like superlatives for like the favorite too. So the moment, like, so they're like the underdog, so exciting. They're still hanging in there, blah, blah, blah. And the moment the tide turns, they just kick the underdog to the curb and be like, so good on the ball. So like all the superlatives that they have, like a list of them, like come out and stuff like that. And they start riding the favorite again. So yeah, just sports media, I just can't. Like I say, I just want to fill a bus off. I have certain commentators. It used to be a car. I used to be able to fit him in a car and drive it off a cliff. I need a bus now, unfortunately, or like maybe like a cruise, dude. That'd be a great idea, actually. Set up a cruise for all these.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you changed it to a cruise because if it was a bus, you'd also have to be careful of Kazi because some of our players might end up in front of that bus.
But then Kazi will get on your case if you say something negative when he's not in a negative mood. Only when he's in ready to move to throw people under the bus. Okay, it's Monday. What are we doing? Who's getting groomed?
This is a week off from everything.
Week off from everything. You do need time off after this freaking last week. That's for sure. Jeez. But some of us, have to work. We're not all princes with butlers, so some of us do have to put a shift in. But I will be back tonight. Speaking of putting a shift in, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, with Bickler. Gally's out and about somewhere. So it'll be just me and Bickler, but we'll talk a lot about probably the game over the weekend. And I mean, Bickler's a huge fan of the international break, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of that talk. No, I doubt it. But there'll be a lot of talk about like yesterday, I would think. But so we'll see you guys then. Do tune in, hit that like, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff. If you're not on YouTube, head on over to YouTube and give us a follow there as well. A lot of stuff coming over during this international break. Hopefully, we'll put it to good use over here and introduce a lot of stuff coming your way. So stay tuned for that. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you guys tonight. Take care.